he rescues them from slavery with the Exodus. Does that solve the problem? Then we have a rescuer. No. He gives us our own land. That's where we get the promised land. We have all this land given to us. So you're not really thinking, well, if we just had our own place, then our problems would be solved. No. So what we need are we need judges. We need people to rule us that are wise. And does that work? If it doesn't, no. And what we find time after time after time is that God is giving us what we're asking for, only to realize we don't know what we need. But God does. And He just can't tell us. We've got to come to that place where we say, you know what? I'm not about it. First Samuel, first second Samuel, first second Samuel is going to be God's way of removing one of the pieces off of the table. And that is the piece of if you only had a king. We had a king, life would be better. We had a king, things would be better. This takes us all the way back to the Judges. You remember Judges, right? It's a three-phase cycle that we see all throughout the book of Judges. So there was perfection, servitude, and deliverance. God's people had taken over the promised land. They were starting to settle, but they needed some sort of government. So this idea of judges would come to the surface. And what a judge would do is he's kind of more or less like an avenger, a superhero. He had these God-given abilities to save his people. And what would happen is the people would start to get close to God, and there would be 40 years where they're walking close with the Lord, and yet they start to drift away during that period. They're walking and they're drifting. And then we get the second phase, which God would raise up a foreign nation to overtake Israel. So they would be in servitude for a generation. And at the end of that generation, they would say, man, God rescue us. And God would send a deliverer. And for that 40 years, God would deliver the people from those nasty nations, whatever they would do. And then they'd start over again. The next generation would live with the Lord and make slowly built and make the service of those. And you see that stuff like 4 years and 3 years and 3 years. But it kind of goes like this. They start up here, it's high, and then it's down. It's high, it's down, it's high, it's down. Until you get to the end of Judges, you remember the last story we had in the book of Judges? Let me tell you what it is. The last story is about a Levite who had a king. Remember this? I tell you to go to church. He goes on a trip only to find in a city within Israel that the guy's about to be raped. And it's said that he shows up his concubine wife. He gets ravaged by a group of ravaged. She dies, and the priest cuts her, the Levite cuts her up into 12 pieces and sends her body parts throughout the entire country. And the solution to the problem is to attack that city of those men, right? You think, oh, well, that's a good idea. But they come to realize they almost wipe out the entire plan of Israel. And they realize, well, hey, we just killed all the guys. They need to make babies. We just can't do genocide of an entire plan. So remember what they did? They go find the people they didn't kill, and those guys say, hey, we don't have wives. So they actually break into villages and steal people's new daughters and give them to those guys to make babies. There is so much bad in every one of those steps. It's like a really twisted version of Breaking Bad. There is just trouble on every corner. And that's the way the book of Judges is. In fact, when you get to the end of Judges, chapter 21, verse 25, is what it is. And Samuel, I think, wrote the book of Judges. And who also wrote 1st and 2nd Samuel. And here's what it says. It says, in those days, there was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right and good. Even Samuel seems to insinuate in verse 25, though, that if they had a king, it would have been good. So there was no king in Israel, so everybody was doing what they wanted to do. As if having a king would stop people from doing stuff that they wanted to do. So then we came up with this little story. We have this little story to come up against right after the book of Judges. Anybody remember that little story? A beautiful story. The book of Ruth. And Ruth is like a snapshot of life during the time of the Judges. And this is like a flower in the midst of the Sahara Desert. just really does. You see this fabric of love still weaving its way through history. God hasn't given up on Israel yet. But I tell you what, he's a really dark place. This leads us into the book of Hosea. The reason we're starting in the halfway through chapter 2 is because chapter 1 and the first part of chapter 2 is about a lady named Hannah. And next Sunday, guys, is what? Do you know what that Sunday is? Mother's Day. And there's no way I'm going to teach Hannah this Sunday and have Mother's Day. Hannah is a beautiful story about a mom, about a wife, but it's a beautiful story. From that comes a young boy named Sam. So that character we're going to see on the stage today. But chapter 1 and chapter 2, we're going to put that up next week. So I'm going to have to backstory some of the stories a little bit. So if you don't understand some of the context, just so you know. So that being said, let's pick it up. 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 12. Now we're going to come across the guy right out of the gate. His name is Eli. Now, Eli is a priest. He is the high priest of Israel during the darkest days. And during the darkest days, Eli is the priest. So let's see how this goes. Eli's sons were scoundrels. Where you go? Now verse chapter. Anybody have another translation instead of scoundrels? Anybody have a different translation for chapter 12? They were wicked men. Anybody have another translation? Corrupt. You have worthless? Worthless men, scoundrels. These are good descriptions, right? I mean, so we have two sons, Hophni and Phinehas. Hophni and Phinehas are scoundrels. They're worthless. It's one different translation. Wicked men. It says they had no regard for their work. They will do a ministry for themselves. They were innocent. Here's what that looks like, verse 15. Now, it was the practice of the priest that whenever any of the people offered a sacrifice, the priest's servant would come with a three-pronged fork in his hand while the meat was being boiled, would plunge the fork into the pan or the kettle, cauldron, or pot. Whatever the fork brought up, the priest would take for himself. This is how they treated all the Israelites who came to Zion. That's the way it's supposed to go. But even before the fat was burned, the priest's servant would come and say to the person who was sacrificing, hey, get the priest some meat to roast. We won't accept boiled meat from you, only raw meat. And if the person said to them, hey, wait a minute, let the fat be burned first, and then take whatever you want, the servant would answer, no, hand it over now. If you don't, I'll take it by force. And this sin of the young men was very great in the Lord's sight, for they were treating the Lord's offering with contempt. Okay, so here we go right out of the gate to like Judges 2:4. We have these priests, Hophni and Phinehas, who are running. And these two guys are the only guys running. It's not like you can go down the road, Hophni and Phinehas are doing a good job, so I'll go down to this tabernacle down the road. There's only one. This is what you saw. They have a monopoly on the field. Hophni and Phinehas can show up with the sacrifice. Normally what would happen is that the priest would be involved with butchering the animal, that the meat was then given to the worshiper, who would then take the meat, cut the fat off, put it on the brazen altar where it was to be burned up, and then that meat was boiled. And what would happen, it says here in the text, the priest would take a fork, long fork, stick it into the pot, and stick it into the cauldron. Whatever he pulled out, that's what the priest would have to use. That's the way it goes. But not for Hophni and Phinehas. Oh, no. That's not the way it's going to go here. What they do is when they show up, or when you show up with your animal, they would cut it up. And let's say you had like an ox or something like that. They would want the prime cut of meat. So they would say, okay, it's all cut up, we give it back to the worshiper, except they say, listen, we just took the fillets off of this. This is going to be ours. We got the best parts. Those are for us. You can do with it whatever you want. We want the best parts. The guys couldn't say anything about it because these are the two priests. Who are you going to go to? It's not like you can put it in. So they're like, hey, whoa, time out. Well, this is supposed to be for the Lord. This is us worshiping God. This is for God. And you're just taking it, cutting it out. How about this? At least give us the fat to put on the brazen altar. No, you don't get the fat either. Because everybody knows the flavor is in the what? Once you go back, you go back. Okay, that's the best thing to do. Go back to it. Let me tell you something. Bacon was back. Okay, but that's where the flavor is. Especially if you use boiled meat. Anybody who's eaten boiled meat before, anybody had it? Okay, so it's not the tastiest. The one time I really had it that I liked it was if you ever get to know and you get a chance to go to Silent Chili. Silent Chili. Actually, you get to okay, so the first time you had it, I thought it was too. I thought it was too, but it's not. It's spaghetti noodles, and it's a sauce they put over the top. It's finely ground beef that they boil, and they boil it with cinnamon and other spices, and it's real nice. It's like a soda when you get a bit when you eat it, because when you eat it, the noodles splash it up on your shirt, and you can tell people that at first timers start to trade to get that dog collar. I didn't still have to see the dog collar with a shirt, and I'm sure you got them because they like it. And so, but the first time you have it, it smells like that. Yeah. It's got to get past that 3 or 4 times and it really goes good. So I feel like it's like the coffee and fingers, they weren't even boiled meat, especially meat with that fat. Who were they? I mean, they were going to do that. Who cares about the Lord? This works for us. This is what's for you. And so they take it and they tell it. Listen, if you don't give that to us, we're going to break the meat tax. We're going to say, Guido, he has a 5-fold ministry. He's going to lay on you unless you give us that food. I mean, this is the law. Okay? And this is what they do. Now, not only that, but I want you to scroll down here to verse 22. When Eli, their dad, finds out about this, he doesn't just hear about what they're doing with the moon. Listen to what else is going on. It says that Eli was very old, heard about everything his sons were doing to all Israel, and how they slept with the women who served at the entrance to the tent. So, these guys weren't always stealing the meat, but there were these girls. I'm talking girls, like the ones that left here to go to the Sunday class, who were dedicated to working in the tabernacle, like Samuel will be, the firstborn was dedicated to working in the tabernacle. Those girls were being captured by Hophni and Ruth. That's what he was saying. And this is church. This is what they do. Well, you can imagine what the Lord talked about that. So, Eli finds out about it. Let's go back to verse 22. So Eli's the high priest. Eli is their God. He says that Eli, as I said before, who was very old, heard about everything his sons were doing, verse 23. So he said to them, why do you do such things? I hear from all the people about these wicked deeds of yours. You know, my sons, the report I hear spreading among the Lord's people is not good. I'm sorry. It's not what? Not good? We'll just hold on to that. Let's keep going. If one person sins against another, well, God may make a mediator for the offender, but if anyone sins against the Lord, who will intercede for them? His sons, however, did not listen to their fathers to eat, so it was the Lord's will that put in. Here's the thing. So here's through the grapevine that things aren't going well. He's older, he's not working the tabernacle anymore, he's probably living Shiloh, but he's not here. His kids are running the business, and his kids are supposed to be doing it. And he gets word from some people, hey, you're doing this, let's tell you this, but this is not going to happen. He hears about it. And I imagine as he hears about it, and his heart sinks, and he's in bed, and he's thinking about it. So when he goes from talking, he finally goes to his texting, and he says, right here, he was very old. Went to talk to his boys. These boys aren't afraid of being what? Beat me up. And these boys already threaten people. Hey, if you don't do it, we'll take it by force. So he goes up to his kids, and they do something like this, and at least the way it sounds, he's like, hey, listen, this is the talk, so I was talking to some people that were talking to some people. You know, you never know what the truth is. You know, there's who knows, but there is this thing that people are saying about you guys that maybe you're being a bit harsh or okay, but if it's against somebody else, maybe if you're doing it against God, his sons, however, did not listen to their father. You get the sense that they're eating the prime rib while they got barbecue on the side of the face. What, Dad? Oh, yeah, whatever, Dad. Whatever, Dad. Whatever. Okay. So, this comes to this 27. So now a man of God came to Eli and said to him, okay, let's stop right this one. He came to Eli, what's it say there? A man of God came to Eli. Wasn't Eli supposed to be the man of God? Eli is. But Eli, in this situation, is struggling with a word. And so a man of God comes up to Eli. Now, I have to believe, in my experience, this isn't just some strange not some days we walked off the street and said, hey, I think this is maybe a neighbor, a friend, maybe a close relative to me. I think it's somebody close to you. If somebody comes up to him that can see the forest he has seen and says to him this, he says, this is what the Lord told me. He said, did I not clearly reveal myself to your ancestors' family when they were in Egypt under Pharaoh? I chose your ancestor out of all the tribes of Israel to be my priest, to go up to my altar, to burn incense, to wear an ephod in my presence. I also gave your ancestors' family all the food offerings presented by the Israelites. Why do you scorn my sacrifice and offering what I prescribed to my dwelling? Why do you honor your sons more than me? Why do you honor your sons more than me? By fattening yourselves on the choice part of every offering made by my people. This is a world now. Where it says you. He's been getting part of the meat. Now, it doesn't say he technically was the one doing the picture, right? But I imagine that when the sons came home after a while, they brought back a gift. Here's a filet. And Dad saw it, but he asked him questions, right? He's like, oh, look at the sun. Where did you get the... Oh, yeah, it's a prime kind of meat. Like, oh, God knows it is. Turn a blind eye to it. But he's eating it. And the Lord calls us to go to this. We're not eating it. We're going to come to the Lord. We're getting something out of it. And so, therefore, the Lord, the God of Israel, declares, I promise that members of your family would minister before me forever. But no, that's not the case. Far be it from me. Those who honor me, I'll honor them. But those who despise me, well, they're going to be destroyed. The time is coming when I will cut short your strength and the strength of your priestly house, so that no one in it will reach old age. And you will see distress in my dwelling. And although good will be done to Israel, no one in your family line will ever reach old age. Every one of you that I do, or every one of you that I do not cut off from serving at my altar, I will spare only to destroy your sight and sap your strength. And all your descendants will die in the prime of their life. And what happens to your two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, will be a sign to you. They will both die in the same day. And I will raise up for myself a faithful priest who will do according to what is in my heart. I will firmly establish his priestly house, and they will minister before my anointed one always. Then everyone left in your family line will come and bow down before him for a piece of silver and a loaf of bread, and they will plead, appoint me to some priestly office so I can have some food to eat. In other words, God says, Eli, you're fired. You're fired, and every promise that was a part of that is cut away. And he says, I cut off your strength, and he says that you are proving the benefits of it's not your relationship. At the actually comes up here in chapter 3. It says, pick it up. Look all the way back up to 18 of chapter 3. Here we find a little bit of action. So here's the second part of the story of God's working in here. But Samuel was ministering before the Lord. He was a boy wearing a linen ephod. And each year his mother made him a little robe and took it to him when she went up with her husband to offer the general sacrifice. Now, I always wonder how long that took. Like, it's cool if they're like kindergarten or first grade, making them little dresses, or for them making them little ephod. I can imagine a 17-year-old not being able to do it that in high school. You know, I feel like, hey, I don't even get to stop. My son likes to sit down while he's still doing whatever he's doing. But his mom comes up to him and says, hey, we're here to get you to do the ephod for me. Mom, I'm 14 years old, so let's sit together. So, but when Hannah comes in, he's loving on his son. They come up every year. And that's the thing about this guy. I mean, remember when I said the girls were dedicated to the tabernacle. It was like boarding school. You sent them there. And that's where they lived. And that's where they learned. And so Samuel is living with Eli and learning about the ways of the Lord. So it says here in 21, and the Lord was gracious to Hannah to give birth to 2 sons and 2 daughters. Meanwhile, the boy Samuel grew up in the presence of the Lord. I think that's huge. Look at that again. Meanwhile, the boy Samuel grew up in the presence of the Lord. Who was the high priest at that time? He was talking about it today? Yeah. So, I want to say this, and this is something I don't want us to put a black hat or a white hat on. Like the rest of us, it's not the same thing. I don't know a lot about the black hat or why we have a struggle with this thing. I know my life, and I know some of the things in my life that have caused me to struggle with this. I don't know why you have a hard time when you honestly get feelings. I can imagine if you are, I do. And if you like that all that, I haven't been a person yet that's all that. And maybe they're out there, I haven't done anything like that. I can't tell you this. Samuel grew up in the presence of the Lord. And what that tells you is that even in the worst of family situations, you can grow up in the Word. Sometimes it's hard to see, but it's always hard. You're having some of those times. You only work some unnecessary times. Just think, you look back and you think, man, you know, if you could have missed it on top of that, that kid should have been more extreme. Samuel grew up in the presence of the Lord. So did Moses. So did you. So did you. Even in the midst of all this, Samuel still grew up in the presence of the Lord. So that leads us into chapter 2. So it says, the boy Samuel ministered before the Lord under Eli in those days. Under Eli, too. In those days, the word of the Lord was rare, so there were not many visions. As you can imagine, it's just a complete mess. Well, one night, Eli, whose eyes were becoming so weak that he could barely see, was lying down in his usual place. And the lamp of God had not yet gone out, and Samuel was lying down in the house of the Lord, where the ark of God was. Keep that note. Then the Lord called Samuel. And Samuel answered, here I am. And he ran to Eli and said, here I am, you called me. And Eli said, I didn't call you. Go back and lie down. So he went and lay down. Again, the Lord called Samuel, and Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, here I am, you called me. My son, Eli said, pick it up. Go back and go lie down. And Samuel did not know the Lord. The word of the Lord has not yet been revealed to him. But I want to stop right there. That's such a huge one. Listen to something. Samuel did not know the Lord. I want to say this because I think it's important for us as Christians to understand. Christians have not cornered the market on the relationship with God. first loves us. We are drawn to the gospel because he calls us. I learned this through these two something, but I've heard this said before. I've heard people say it. It says, hey, listen, until you become a Christian, God won't hear your prayers. It seems to me in Scripture that's the hardest thing to make sense. But the Lord loves every one of us. He doesn't love us when we become Christians. He loves us while we were yet sinners. Christ died for us. I think it's so vital to read these passages because sometimes we think, if I just knew the Lord more, if I just walk closer with the Lord, then I would know what He wants from me. You can strive all you want. When the Lord calls you, you'll hear it. You don't even have to know it. And you'll pray. So, this morning, one of the things that really touched me as I was reading through this and I was getting ready to teach it, I am so So the Lord called him, and so here in verse 8, the third time the Lord called Samuel, he called Samuel, and Samuel got up and looked at Eli and said, here I am, you called. Then Eli realized that the Lord was calling the boy. He thinks he's got another time. Well, I've heard of people like this looking to walk with the Lord. Maybe this is one of those times. So he says, so Eli told Samuel, go and lie down and look at pulse and say, speak, Lord, and your servant is listening, and your servant is listening. So Samuel went and lay down in his place. And the Lord came and stood there, calling the other time, Samuel, Samuel, and Samuel said, speak, and your servant is listening. And so the Lord is standing over Samuel and said, Samuel, Samuel. Samuel was like, we can not be such a great person. And he went back. After another day, just what's it going? What do you think the Lord would say? If you look up and say, hey, Lord, I'm here. What do you say to me? What do you think the Lord says? That's what we're doing with you. What else? What else do you think you say? Good morning, sir. What else? I'm with you. Good, what? Don't worry. Good. There's hope. I've got everything today. I can do everything today. And you still got it? That's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. Look at it? Okay. I tell you what, Lord is educating me, they're right. the Ark of God. Does anybody know what that place is called, by the way? Where's the Ark of God? In Tabernacle? Anybody know this? This is your Bible study question today. In the Holy of Holies, he gets to go in there. Only the priest, and when does he get to go? Once a year. Do you know that that's such a holy place, and so many people have died just walking in or doing something wrong while they're in there, that they actually tied bells. The tradition was that they put bells on the bottoms of the high priest when he went in, as well as the staffs around his ankle that would go out into the holy place, into the courtyard. And so what would happen is, the priest would go in and start to do his thing with the ark, but what would happen is, as he's doing it, if he did something wrong, you would hear the bells stop moving. What does that mean? He got bugged out. And you know this, and that's why they have the thing around his ankle. They pull his dead body out. You just can't go in there. And yet, what do you find Samuel do? He's sleeping under the ark. He's not just walking. Hey, Dad, what's up? He's not just gets his pillow, just leans up, and then I don't think it's like rains and walks up. It must have been warm or something. Maybe just curls up next to it. You know, that gold box, and it's just there, and it's so quiet. I mean, nobody goes in the Bible. So he's just sleeping there. So, what's that tell you about God? What's that tell you about him? He knows your heart. Do you think he's bent on rules and regulations? No. He bends towards your heart. He says, listen, Samuel, come on. He's like a parent that when you sleep and your kid wakes up and crawls onto your basket on the bottom of your bed and crawls up, you just want to roll over in your arm, right? Now, it's different when they're 30, 40 years old to do that, but I mean, listen, they're a kid, it's cute. God just takes their nails and puts them in. Come lay down here. Be with me. This is the God that speaks to you. That's the kind of God that we're talking about. Not a God that early morning is out for you. I got one. It's not me. I got that. It's not me. So Samuel's gone. He hears the calling of God. And this is what God says to him. I don't know how to do this. Let's say he's a preacher. Just by way of, I think he may be 10, 11, 12 years old. Here's what the Lord said. The Lord said to Samuel, I'm about to do something in Israel that will make the ears of everyone who hears about it. And all that time, I will carry out against Eli everything that is spoken against his family, from beginning to end. So I told him that I would judge his family forever because of the sin he knew about. His sons blasphemed God, and he failed to restrain them. Therefore, I swore to the house of Eli, the guilt of Eli's house will never be atoned for by sacrifice or offering. That's what Samuel gets done. I don't know what's going on. Because it's just a message. This is what I want you to know. I think there's a reason for this. It's taking a care of this thing. Samuel laid down until morning and then opened the doors of the house of the Lord. Did you say that Samuel slept until morning? No. You know what he just heard? This is his nature. This is the person that he loves and believes in. He's just been told something about his quote-unquote God. But Eli didn't. So it says he was afraid to tell Eli the vision. But Eli called him and said, Samuel, my son. Samuel answered, here I am. What was it he said to you? Eli asked. Don't hide it from me. May God deal with you, be it ever so severely, if you hide anything from what he told you. I don't see why he did that way. It's better than it was. It's manipulated. Okay. So Samuel told him everything, hiding nothing from him of what Eli said. He said, Lord, let him do what is good in his eyes. He told me what he said, everything he said. Because Samuel was just like, well, you just said, probably didn't know, you know, like, Samuel, See, why I think this last little section is so important is because the Lord was with Samuel as he grew up. And he let none of Samuel's words fall to the ground. In all his work, he went to go see the recognized that Samuel was attested as a prophet of the Lord. And the Lord continued to appear at Shiloh, and there he revealed himself to Samuel in his word. And Samuel's word came to pass. So Samuel is his life is going to put everything back into his name. Because the next chapter is going to be shown in Samuel's word. The next of his word. And this is what it's like. Something that is really important. But I want to go back and look at two things real quick. The two things we can learn from this story. I think we can learn one from Samuel's popular things. I think we can learn something from the second. The first one is simply this, that we need to be aware of entitlements. Beware of entitlements. Popular thing is that since they're the high priest, they get to do whatever they want. Since their dad was the high priest, they get to do whatever they want. And since they're here, they're in control, it doesn't really matter. It's just what's best for us, what's best for me. Ephesians 4:1 says this, as a prisoner for the Lord God, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you've received. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. What Paul says is that you have a calling, and to live that out is to be gentle, humble, patient. That's how we do it. And I'm not just talking as a pastor, because God's going to say later in the New Testament, it's the priesthood of all believers. And I want to say this because sometimes, the gospel is that sometimes wrestle between the Samuel side of me and the Eli side of me. The Samuel says, please be honest with God. Please be honest with God. Is that that's the two things of the we can sometimes feel entitled because we've been here, we do something, we've been here a long time or whatever. And so it means that we get stuff. We used to get the best stuff. And I think that's one of those things that at least for popular videos, at least for myself, I've got to get careful that my ministry is for the Lord. It's not for others. Not that others are important. It's not that I don't love the Lord to love others because I do. But remember what it says at the beginning. When they have a regard for the Lord, when they get their word. I think sometimes if we're not careful, we can feel entitled. What are some examples that I do? Well, let me ask you a question. If everybody in the church were to give up their time, their talent, and their treasures to the same level you are, where would the church be? Some of you may say, you don't know me, you don't know my circumstances, and you're right, totally right. And you don't have to answer me. This is just something good that we wrestle with. One of the things that's so fun that God has done is learning how to pray, learning how to give back, learning how to be a part of something. Because at times, we've had folks who do, and they treat church like a fitness center. Like they pay for their membership, so everything should be clean, working, available, spot on. That, my friends, have a popular video type of smell. It's not a remember. But here, one of those things that used to be my life, because all that might get the question. Hey, Mike, if the church was Chris and Dave, they might, what are they doing? You have no money. So that's no money. Never mind. Now, I think, but, hey, here's it. We're not paying you. Would that be the next one? I want to say yes. I wish I could get you out of the but do you see what I'm saying here? We have to really get back to something. before, no one can see two masters. Either he'll hate one or he'll love the other. He'll be devoted to one or despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Because money can be exchanged for anything you value like that. And so sometimes, I just don't want to be totally transparent and honest with somebody because I'm afraid of what's going to happen. Samuel, on the other hand, doesn't. Now, maybe I think that he's young. He hasn't completed up as much as he has been, so. But whatever the case is, you are aware that you just have to be peace with this situation, with this person. And sometimes it's really hard to do. It's really hard. Especially when it's people that you love. Now, this is important because sometimes you think honesty means that you get to just say whatever's on your mind. That's not the same thing. Amen? That's not the same thing. I think we need to pray about it. Like this godly man that turned out to be like, we need to pray about it. We need to be in a relationship. We need to be a person. And we understand this is a good word. It's not my opinion. This is a good word. Maybe if we honest about pray about it, if one person said to me a while back, the true kindness love keeps us from God. So anyone that says, Mike, I'm going to be really honest with you, I stop it. I don't need to be brutal. I can't say it to somebody else. Go back to you. But it's really important to hear that. I say this. This is why I have no reason to be so kindness because of my family. Sometimes we need to be brutal. So, the first part of the story, you all be secondly, make sure that you're stand up to the mission control. Never forget who you are. I'm a child of God. It allows me to not live in fear. I get to be in the Holy of Holies. Do you realize that? In fact, let me just say it like this. The Holy of Holies is found there. Anybody know where the Holy of Holies is found today? I will. The Holy of Holies is found there. I get to say it with my heart. And from that place, I have a strength, a peace. It doesn't mean I don't feel cool. It means I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to be a slave to others. But I stay with me. And so, this is the challenge. I can feel the baskets of my mercy. This way, I feel that's not trying to write. You're not supposed to be a better than me. Okay. We are supposed to be the Holy. So, let's go to our Father this morning. Thank you for my friends here. Thank you for the neighbors. So, we should be loving you. And thank you for what you're doing in our lives. Thank you for living in us. That makes me so happy. That's what this whole book is about. Get into a place where we're getting closer and closer and closer into that person that you love. So God, I ask that you would remind us of God and come because you stand. We have to be afraid of you. Every day we wake up, there you are, sitting at the edge of our God, so excited that you're getting every day to come. But help us to remember that. Always in your presence, you are always there, even in the midst of this.